And I love the thought of coming home to you.
Hello!
Hi! I thought we were going to push for the...
Episode 2.
Welcome to
Welcome to Video T-Pish.
Episode 2.
Video Tea Time.
Of behind the scenes.
Welcome to Radio 4.
That gargle in your room is my 90-year-old blood.
I don't even really like Kiss that much. But there you go.
He's a kiss.
I'm drinking for a Viz mug. The only thing of the Viz I've ever read was the Puggy.
What?
A Viz mug. The Puggy.
Puggy.
There was a Viz Puggy.
How did you
Down at
know
Whitburn Cross. We used to play it every morning before school. It's pretty good. It was a wee 5p number, so your jackpot was a fiver, so it wasn't that great. But
Mine's has just got a star.
No, it's
no, there's not.
Mega Sun.
Oh, Mega Sun.
Mega Sun. Mega Sun Black Hole. That's what it'll be after all this tea, man. You'll be it's the ultimate detox.
I know. You lose your centre of gravity. Whoa!
I always forget how like hydrating tea is. It's like, see, after you drink like at least 3 of them, that's you. See, it was burst all day.
That's the one is tea isn't hydrating, but it fills you with fluid.
Is it? I feel hydrated after tea. Maybe
I think it's a diet.
Maybe it just kicks any other water in your body out.
It does.
Because you definitely sweat and you definitely push. Just the tea reviews.
It kicks you in every time, but I'm addicted to it.
We've done this before, haven't we? Because I'm pretty sure someone made the joke video Namaste.
Tea.
We've done that. We have to fuck me.
We love tea.
So this is a nice wee look at the behind the scenes of video Namaste.
This is
how it works.
The real BTS.
So episode 2, behind the
Oh, aye,
scenes.
so we're talking about behind the scenes, aren't we?
We are talking about behind the
We're
scenes.
talking about films about filmmaking.
Films about filmmaking. So the first one we done was Full Tilt Boogie from Dusk Till Dawn.
Oh!
And that was more of a like
So that was
raw
a bit-
on set
yeah.
sort of documentary focusing about the people and all of that. Now we're going to be speaking about the Return of the Living Dead documentary, which is called More Brains.
More brains.
Mere Brains Return to the Living Dead.
Yes, I believe that's what it is.
And that is more of a retrospective talking head effort. So
It's part of definitely a new trend, I think, of modern documentaries about cult films.
Yep.
Someone made a film called The Return of the Living Dead, which sounds just vile. And then someone else made a film about that film called More Brains, A Return to the Living Dead. Do you know what it's like? It's like Inception, isn't it? Because it's a film that's in a film. It's like Inception. It's like Inception, because there's something inside. That's how you go on, you fucking prick.
It's a 2-hour documentary of almost purely talking heads, isn't it? And it's people
like,
telling stories.
That's the main reason I picked this one. Not just because I've got a huge pinger for this film, but because I love Dan O'Bannon as well, and I love hearing more than anything other people talk about Dan O'Bannon, because everybody's got a completely different take on the guy, because he's like he is that kind of troubled artist, but also a bit of a dick, but also a fucking amazing filmmaker, despite the fact that he's a writer first and foremost. And it's also like that retrospective too, and I know that like most behind the scenes films that we were going to be talking about was going to be you know, about the actual process of making the film and everything like that, but this is more people talking about wasn't that fucking nuts.
I was watching a TV show and they had a spoof on some zombies and they were looking for brains.
You'll thank me when no one eats our brains.
There was no reference to zombies eating brains until Return of the Living Dead.
It was so different from what everybody else was doing.
Every one of the dead people that are major players are actually characters.
It is like a definitive cult film, and it's existed in a huge universe George A. Romero's films, and like the whole history behind that. They don't actually go a great deal into that. Like I had to read up more on that. And I found out some amazing things like Night of the Living Dead. You know how it's there's no copyright on it.
Yeah.
It's just public domain. It was all down to because they had a last minute change of title. Like it was going to be Night of the Flesh Eaters, and then at the last minute they changed the title card for it, but the distributors never put on copyright, and it was that simple. The copyright sign isn't on there, and Night of the Living Dead
just fell prey.
Yeah, and like obviously the industry's changed so much that the copyright notices are at the tail end of credits and stuff like that. Like, you used to get like, you know, the wee Squash Globe logo and stuff like that at the start of a film. So it wasn't copywritten or anything, and that's how Dan O'Bannon got a lot of the. It was a lot more relaxed in terms of like, you know, him getting the rights of the Dead franchise, I suppose, and it being kind of an unofficial sequel as well. Yeah. So like, there's all that like stuff for all the dorks like me to get into, and it does this amazing thing. The actual film itself, and I always wanted to find out more about it, like how they got away with it being inspired by the events of Night of the Living Dead, and like they touch on it briefly in the film, like and they just basically say, "Oh no, it happened, but not like that," you know, and like they refer to the movie. Itself. Yeah,
even starts Return of the Living Dead starts with that card at the beginning saying all these based on true events.
Yeah, totally, and it's like it's a nice.
You think it was Fargo that did it first?
Bollocks to you, mate.
Fucking exactly.
But the thing I like about More Brains is, or the thing that I noticed with More Brains is like, it is a retrospective, but that's because the changing tides, especially how horror films are perceived. Like as we spoke about Full Tilt Boogie, like back in the 80s or like in the 70s, you wouldn't have had a lot of film crews following horror films about, because they were still regarded fairly low as cheap entertainment, apart from the big ones like Rosemary's Baby, Alien, Exorcist, The Omen. But when it came to like wee low budget films like that, like people loved them, but studios or distributors regarded them as fucking dog shit.
Well, there's a line in the documentary about it being one step up from
pornography. So it's like, you would never have got that now. So now what we're seeing is how popular horror's become, especially since the late 90s, like see when stuff like Nightmare USA came out, and the Texas Chainsaw documentary, The Shock and Truth, which I believe the guy that directed, I think it's the guy that directed Lost Souls done. Once you started seeing that stuff coming out with Anchor Bay and Blue Underground, it started giving horror fans that what they'd always wanted, but it also showed that there was a craft and that their love was justified and their love was getting fed back to them as well. So that's what More Brains feels like to me. It feels like, here's a retrospective on a film that you all love. It's a punk rock zombie film they've grew up loving, but here's finally all the things you wanted to know about it, and you're seeing a lot more of them now. Like your Nightmare on Elm Street documentary, your fucking like 3 hours Hellraiser documentary, your 2.5 hour, 3 hour Fright Night documentary. You're getting
all this stuff.
You're finally getting all these things
as well.
And it's great, and they've got a lot of good stories. But it's just good because for years you felt like you weren't getting anything apart from whatever Anchor Bay could maybe afford, or whatever. Like if you bought a DVD and there was like a trailer on it, you'd be like, oh cool, there's a fucking trailer. It's a 35mm rip, but it's shite. But now you're getting full things that you wanted, and you're like, finally, like my love for
it's all thanks to like DVDs and like physical releases dying on their arse, because now it's a collector's market, and it's folk actually pumping a lot of money into like collector's DVDs, like all the Arrow ones. That's Second Sight, the Return of the Living Dead release.
Amazing. I think Second Sight's an offshoot for Sony, I want to say, because Second Sight's got the From Beyond as well, and see just like the £6 From Beyond Second Sight, it's got amazing artwork, and it's got the disc must be absolutely full of special feature stuff, and it's like for basically pennies.
And it's and it's amazing to think that the amount of I was thinking about how much money goes into making a film like that, like flying everybody out in the same studio, and obviously not at the same time or anything like that, but like there must be a lot of money that like goes into something like that, and it's all just like, you know, by the wayside as well. So this isn't like that Return of the Living Dead disc. I've never seen it with like a sticker on the front saying including More Brains, and making a big deal of the fact that there's a huge 2 hour documentary about it, which is in its own right fucking fascinating. And it's not just, I think that's what I had said to you, because you hadn't seen Return of the Living Dead, had you? And I'd like,
no, there's no way I could have watched that without.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like Full Tilt Boogie where you could watch it.
Aye, and that is the case with this. It's like really, because it goes into so much specific detail that you have to be informed going in. You know, so
because it is. I mean, it is about like. It's just, very specific about the film.
It's just the set stories and how everything worked out in people's stories in terms of like them remembering it or things that they were just ad-libbing or things like that, but it's no at the time, it's them looking back in it. So,
I mean, like again, it's the difference between Dusk Till Dawn and the Full Tilt Boogie and More Brains is like Full Tilt Boogie is like an artistic filmmaking piece, not to knock what's going on with More Brains, but it's definitely functional and it totally serves its purpose very well, but also like it's just the people, like it's a very simple formula, it's just the people who were there talking in great depth, but one of the great things, they work with that quite well, because what they do is if somebody says something about one of the others, then you can tell that they've gone back to one of the other, whoever's been interviewed and whoever's come up in the conversation, they'll be like, that person said that, and they'll be like, really? Or they'll say something like, I don't remember that happening, or like, that didn't happen. So it's kind of interesting to see that play back and forth. But obviously, like, I mean, it's almost like it was like an extremely well-made podcast, but it's obviously it's obviously a lot tighter than that. It's a lot
there's
more
some nice
organised
edits as well, like tell us straight what folk are saying as well. Like even just like we like throwaway lines that are completely irrelevant to whatever scene's added. It's like, you know, just a nice wee kind of quirky ad putting in a clip from a film that reflects what someone's actually saying. You know, like, and I got surprised and it's a fucking zombie popping up going, meh. You know, it's things like that. Like, it's nice wee touches.
But if it's something that you really really love, then it's just great to spend time.
Aye, exactly, and that's another reason that I picked this. It's like it's not really got a huge amount of broad appeal, but it means a lot to me, and that's all that fucking matters.
What's an audience anyway?
No, but genuinely, if you've watched this film and you liked it, you'll get a lot out of this. If you've watched this film and you didn't think much of it, you probably won't like it.
But like, I mean, but the good thing about it as well is that people just having conversations have been quite open and honest.
Yeah, because enough time's passed as well. Like if they don't need to worry about burning bridges because there's no heavy industry hitters in this.
What did you do to Freddie?
The most challenging aspect for me for the production was working with Beverley. She was just so beautiful to look at. I was just shaking in my boots. I just wanted to jump on her.
Tom and I, before we got started, Dan had us go on a date, and I don't think Tom could tell you what we did. I can't tell you what we did, but we did have a date, and we didn't really talk about our roles so much.
Honestly, I don't remember going on the date.
I guess other people think differently.
Sorry, Beverley.
The bit I couldn't stop laughing at was when Miguel Nunez is like, I had a great time on set. Titties! It's like...
Through the documentary, they just keep dropping him going, titties.
Titties. Something that, although it doesn't have a huge amount of broad appeal, I think some of the anecdotes are just so fascinating anyway, regardless. So there is a kind of broad appeal there. Like you're hearing folk that have gone. Like when you think about making a film, it's like no many folk get to experience that, right? Regardless of whether or not you're interested in actual filmmaking, you know, it's like no many. That's a weird bit of culture that you're involved in, you know, and like again, like I say, no many folk are involved in an actual film release and production and stuff.
I always find it really weird. It must be odd as well to be part of something like Return of the Living Dead, where it never really did anything for your career, but you're part of something that's very, very important to a lot of people.
Aye. And you get that sense as well from like the exhausted stars that are like, I've done so many fucking conventions. like everybody's always like she's been the final girl countless times, and she's like a goddess in the horror fan industry.
Like a big scream queen.
Aye.
Like her and Michelle Bauer and
Rick
Stevens as well. It's like, and Barbara. It's like they're like big scream queens. And
and she's top of that list, and things like you know, seeing interviews with her talking about having that prosthetic fanny put on, like, they couldn't show everything. Otherwise she's up there fucking clapping. You know?
I love that because it's like she's dancing and then there was their pubes out, and when they were filming it and they showed the dailies, they were like, you can't have that, so go and shave her. So he was like, we take her and we shaved her.
You can't see, you can see her pubic hair.
So he was like, we take her and shaved her.
You can see her, make her look unnatural then.
Shave her, and then it was like, they filmed her with her fully shaven, dancing in the buff, and they were like, that's even worse. Go make a fucking fanny piece for her. So they go and like, they didn't, did she not say like she was just wearing her pants and they poured this like gel in to like set. It's like, oh.
And that was something that was really interesting as well, that effects guy who came in and like done quite a good job with some things but really fucked up in others.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting to see as well, like the failed attempts, because like you very rarely see that in any behind the scenes, like here's what this could have looked like.
Yeah.
And it's shite. But like at the start of the film when his zombies comes back to life and he's yellow and they cut his head off and he walks about the place and that. And in the documentary you see that it's this weird, like, they've raised the shoulders up to like above his head and they've got like wee eye holes and it's all creased and it's fucking terrible.
That looks shocking.
Mm-hmm. The Yellow Cadaver, which ended up being a headless character, was particularly challenging and from my effort actually not very successful.
Oh my God. Neither Dan nor I could believe it when Bill revealed the original Yellow Man.
The method that I used of trying to build up the shoulders, the head, and put the head in the neck and then be able to cut the neck off was not the ideal circumstance for creating that illusion.
Basically what I saw were Polaroids of someone who was painted yellow with dental dam wrapped around their shoulders up to the top of their head, and that was supposed to be the headless corpse. That's not going to work.
And he's like
made out of crisps.
And that guy as well, when they're interviewing him as well, is like, if I flogged myself, it was fine, but...
Yeah, no, because he was like, there was no other way of doing it.
Pack your bags.
And that production designer, the wee boy with the cravat, he's amazing. He was really, really interesting in terms of like going about the whole dealing with actors thing. So like Dan O'Bannon is notoriously salty, right? So like he was
he's
quite
very eccentric and he's got a lot of vices,
a lot of guns,
a lot of nudie women and a lot of drugs. Very into his
there is a still in the film of him directing one of the, I can't remember which lassie it is in the cast, but he's got her by the arm and he's clearly pulling her about.
Did she not say that? She's like, it was the first time I'd ever done a big film and Dan was like, go over there, but he's like pushing her like, she's like, fuck.
And like doing things like surprising actors, like he'd learned from Walter Hill, like the stair collapse. Like told the actress who had already had a bit of a hard time film, like just run up the stairs, they won't collapse, it's cool, and right enough to do it. And she fucking like totally bruises herself and she's all done in and stuff like that. And of course that sort of thing happens on films, but like again, it was an interesting insight into how the industry worked then and how much that, like, I find it fascinating that now, like, that could never, that wouldn't get made anyway.
Yeah.
But like it's also like the processes behind it are so drastically different. You know,
like that'd be a lawsuit probably.
Totally, absolutely, fucking should be too. It's a fucking arsehole move. But like his approach is so raw, but you know, it's like he gets like his own screen, it works, and he's got all the results, and you can tell that there's that kind of sense of mania behind the film as well, like fucking Mel Gibson films as well. You're like, that guy's a nutter, and you can see that on screen because everybody's just like on edge, like just getting ready.
I like the fact that the film basically, it doesn't go too deep into really a lot of stuff, but it shows you like the full gamut of what goes on in a film, things that go wrong, the push and pull between actors, like the sets not working right, people not getting on, people getting fired. Like it's like a full rounded thing showing you what can happen in the entity of a film. Really,
you do kind of wonder, like a good behind the scenes needs a little bit of struggle, I think.
Like it's not salacious. It's not like it was like juicy gossip or anything like that. But just even hearing people saying like, he wanted me not to say anything. He was wanting me not to scream. He was got to dub the scream, but he's like, fuck this. I'm only on screen for 2 seconds. I'm going to scream.
Yeah.
So he does it anyway, and it's like, just hearing all the wee tiny machinations, seeing how they all manage to still fit in.
Well, the whole sequence of your boy climbing into
the furnace.
Aye. Like, that was a great wee story, and how they just kind of came up with it on the spot and just did it.
Because he was like, my guy wouldn't want to be a zombie, so he was like, so he was like, how's it bombs himself? And it's quite emotional, a little bit. It's quite emotional when you see it.
Keep it like, it's that perfect, like, they've got the humour in this film. Like I was saying to you, please watch it, you'll enjoy it anyway, but like, it is up there with Evil Dead 2 for me in terms of like how good a comedy it is fundamentally. And this film done quite well as well, and like as did Evil Dead 2. It's like these films get a lot of money. Other films recently, like Cabin in the Woods and stuff like that, done really well. The industry never fucking learns that horror comedies work. And yeah, every time it just, you hear about these horror comedies get like in the struggle to get them made.
I know.
Like,
I think sometimes I feel like it's funny, when I was watching the film, was having exactly the same thought, but I sometimes wonder if it's like the talent isn't necessarily always there.
Aye.
Like there's a certain type of...
Because the budget's only there.
Well, yeah, there's that as well, but I'll say it's like a certain type of... again, because as you said, horror's kind of maligned a wee bit, but like the directors that do work in horror are always a bit...
Plus, I think
odd, and they're maybe not best suited to doing. They can do tongue in cheek, but they can't do like actual proper.
I think the thing is with good horror comedies, they can be like instant classics.
Yeah.
Bad horror comedies are like the most unbearably pish thing to watch.
And I think there are people just doing them all the time, I guess.
It's because there's such a huge correlation between the two as well. Like when somebody's trying to tell you a joke, you're cynical about what's going to come, so you're waiting for that punchline, just like when you're watching a horror. So that problem's amplified. You're watching a horror, you're waiting for somebody jumping it, so you're like, you're that same level of cynical, waiting for something to happen. And so then if it's shite, it's an absolute dud. You notice it more. It's the exact same with comedy. The two are inseparable. They're the exact same thing.
Horror you can only really work horror into physical comedy. You couldn't work horror into like wordplay comedy as such. In physical comedy, you have to be like own it with your timing and own it with your like delivery and stuff. Whereas if you're just doing like say stand up, all you have to do is be able to tell a good story and have good timing. Whereas with physical comedy, it's all got to be there. It's all got to be visible and you can see it.
Also, horror and comedy, I feel, are two genres that have to work a little bit harder to grab you in the opening, because it's like you're already on the defense. Like with comedy, unless it's someone you like, if it's a group of people that you've never seen before in a comedy, it has to work a wee bit harder, because you're sitting like, I don't know about you, but like it's the same with, even with stand-up comedy and stuff like that. If it's someone you never know, there's always a wee bit like, are you going to make me laugh?
Totally.
and then it happens, and then you start to relax.
I know.
But then it must be the same with horror as well, because you're just like, because there's so much bad horror out there, there'll always be a slight sense of like, how's this going to go?
Yep.
And so the film has to work even harder on both sides.
Like, and when films do that well, horror and comedy, specifically horror comedies, like that's double the task. It has. Like, I have the biggest respect for horror comedies of all genres that work well, because they're on all cylinders and they have to work on multiple levels, not just like one or the other. But how many dramas do you watch and you think, this better be dramatic?
Exactly.
You just don't. You don't have that. I want a high
also, horror has
I better fucking great.
Horror has that problem as well, where it can start, like a lot of horrors I watch have that same problem where they don't really know how to end it or how to.
It's all
like
concept,
in the last act,
execution.
Yeah. But anyway.
But this opens on a big fucking gag as well. That whole US military bangs the drum and doof, the fuck, and then the credits start.
That's good. And the line, my favourite line in the film was like, what was it? Do you ever think about sex and death? It's like, I see, I've totally fucked it now. Do you like sex and death? Yeah, fuck off and die.
Yeah, so fuck off and die. Such a good line.
But like that, I mean that one of the things that came across in that documentary is how none of them really knew how it was going to turn out, and then when everybody saw the final edited thing, they were just like, "Shit!" I mean, that itself I find really interesting as well, because that's a director who's really got a hold of what he's doing, because everybody who's there is working on something, and they're just doing their job, but they're at the back of their head, they're like, nobody really knows how a film's going to come together, and the only person that has to really think about that is the director.
Totally, and the fact that like something that I found fascinating about this that I never got for watching the film, because like when you watch the film, you think, right, the vision's spot on, all the beats are there, and everything works. So you imagine somebody like that to be like on point on set as well.
Yeah.
So like watching this and hearing stories about him, because like before I watched this, it was you were like, Dan O'Bannon with a gun and blah blah. I was like, what? I thought it was fucking what? So like to find out that he was completely incapable of communicating with a lot of people, and he just screamed a lot, like that to me is kind of more impressive than someone who's together and able to communicate their vision, like somebody like Rodriguez, you know, who's just like, like he's but he's still got this vision behind all that rage, you know. That fucking fascinates me, you know, that you can't communicate to people, but you can communicate like anonymously behind a film that you've made, you know.
We're getting deep into the honeypot. Starting to break my knuckles.
One thing that comes across in the documentary is how much of a shame it is that they never got Bannon. He obviously died in 2009. But they have a wee interview with him at the end
in his house. And that's interesting. Like something that was kind of lacking in the Full Tilt Boogie disc is that there's a behind the scenes on the disc, in the second sight disc of that, and they basically, it's amazing, like, so they've got the documentary, and then they've also got like a look at a retrospective on Return of the Living Dead 2 and 3 as well. So like they but it's the same interviews, they've just expanded on like other aspects, and there's some like deleted parts of the interviews and that, and there's arguably one of the most interesting anecdotes in the deleted scene section, and it's that production designer talking about going to like morgues and things like that with him and Dan O'Bannon, and some of the stuff they find out is there's too much that goes on to say. So like I'll try and get like a link to it or something like that, and put it up or something.
Because they did talk about going to see the mummies and stuff.
But
that was just kind of barely touched on.
But basically it's like folk in the like in that whole community, like the working morgues and everything like that. For the stories that he was telling are all a bit fucking.
But the good thing is like all the young cast, especially all the punks and all that, were like all just really young. Like a lot of them, it was probably their first film or first real on-set experience, and they all had a great time because they were all like just as sweet as each other. Apart from, I think Joe Shepherd was a stripper at the time.
She seemed to be like a bit of a breaker in the set. Like a lot of
I love Joe Shepherd, man. She's cool as fuck. But I don't think it was her first film. Like I think she told a story about how there was a rumour that she got the part by having sex with Dan O'Bannon, and she was like, "That's fucking nonsense." She was like, "I was a stripper." But
exactly. Like, just that folk make that connection. Or you obviously you strip in front of folk, you must fuck everyone.
But it's like Joe Shepherd's pretty rad. Like. She was telling stories about how she like would go to Wayne's birthday parties and just like was it like birthday parties or something, and she'd come down and put like blood in her mouth and like scare all the Waynes.
Dan wanted really bright blue eyes and blonde hair, and I remember getting into a debate with Bill Stout and Dan O'Bannon about the nipples on the half-corpse and how she needed a nightgown, and Dan wanted to see the nipples and Bill thought it would be a rating issue.
I'm buzzing in the damn head.
Something I wanted to talk about with like all of them in general was when you're watching behind the scenes footage or anything like that, retrospectives, anything, like a big problem I have sometimes is like I don't want to know too much.
Right.
Like I don't know if you get that. Like
no, I want guts, baby. I want heat first. I want to go back up the birth canal.
I think I do know what you mean. Sometimes you can demystify.
I never stop. Like if I'm halfway through something, I'll be like, I'm not stopping. This is fucking fascinating. But sometimes I'm like.
But if it's boring stuff, if it's like a guy sitting talking about like the budget,
like Christopher Nolan's behind the scenes stuff.
I've not watched it. I can't.
Oh no! It's so clinical. It's like just saps all the fun out.
Is there no one where it's like I don't know if it's on one of the Batmans, but it's like half an hour of like him and a guy just sitting talking across from each other with a wee table in the middle of them, and he's just talking about his films. Oh my fucking god. That man, he hates making films. He really must be doing maths.
He does talk about it like a struggle, but like there is a... Oh, no, I'm not getting into Nolan. Sorry, what were you saying anyway?
I can't even remember, man. No, I think the thing I always feel like is... I love the how do they do that aspect, because it's
how do you do these?
I love the how they did the how do they do that aspect, because usually it's especially in films like this, it's usually something quite inventive, like because it's usually a case of somebody said, right, we need a director or a writer just say something like, we want this effect, this is what happens in the story, and then they'll tell an art person that's what they want, and then that person has to go and figure out how to do that. And yeah, no, I do love all that sort of stuff.
It's amazing to think that films like this with no frame of reference really even get made. Like, that's something that always fascinates me about Alien. Like, that film, when that came out, there was nothing like it. That vision of space as it is in that film, never been even thought of. Like, making something like that work alone, let alone work so well, it's incredible, because that's completely unique thought and originality, and just to have that level of like concept is just mind-boggling, man.
And of course, written by Dan O'Bannon.
Yeah, totally.
SSQ was approached by Enigma Records. We were really thrilled that one of our songs would be so featured in the film. We'll make love till we die.
All the songs sort of fit the mood in a weird way, which I think is very surprising.
If you haven't seen the film, please give it a go, because it's so unusual to me that it's not as huge as it should be, because it's so accessible to everybody. It's funny as fuck, and it's sexy, and the soundtrack's amazing, and all the creature effects and everything are fucking great.
Just I know we're not talking about the film, but like, just to talk about the film for a second, one of the things that I loved was the fact that every time like the zombie stuff happened, and every time bad things were happening, the music sort of went full kind of party mode. Like it was like it was like the zombies are now having fun.
Yeah, totally.
Like, and that's reflected in the soundtrack, which is just hundreds of amazing punk bands. Cramps is TSOL on it, SSQ, Stacey Q's band, The Damned.
Yep.
Ashes to ashes. It's like, whoa, where did this come from?
So, moving on, we've got one more left.
Richie's forgot something.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm like,
sorry. So, as we mentioned before, there are no keywords for these films on IMDb. So Finley's done his very own keyword roundup.
Fake word roundup. Gun on a table. Fake Fanny. George Nomero. Miguel Nunes. Swallowing mud. Fired SFX guy. Spinal fluid. Small cry. Don Calfa's scarf and titties.
Titties.
So there you go.
It's good.
Nice one, man.
We should make those the keywords.
George Nomeros.
Can we get into IMDb and do that?
Aye, we could. I don't know if you need IMDb Pro to
Any IMDb Pro guys?
Fake Fanny. Imagine clicking on the link for Fake Fanny.
Fucking can't click fast enough. Just be mechanical animals front cover. Ghost in the Shell too, Fake Fanny.
So one more film to go after this, and it's the story of the making of The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Right, film it up.
That was my
often considered to be
that was Marlon Brando in an orgasm.
Often considered to be one of the worst films ever made, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know what I mean.
You ever seen Sucker Punch?
I was thinking, what Snyder film do I pick? Honestly, that's the only reason I stalled.
You're an SJW. You don't like the Snyder film. Drooling all down themselves. Get a bib, mate. Was that a fart?
No, that was the.
Oh,
that was the cut.
Get on that, mate.
Get on that.
That was the stop in the whole production area. Was that a fart?
Oh, good for you.
Or that bit in Living in Oblivion. They're redoing it and they're like, right, I think we've got it done now. Let's do the scene. And it's like, aye, they bar. Oh, for fuck's sake. Amazing.
Right, aye, so we'll see you soon for a look at the making of the Island of Dr. Moreau called Lost Souls. So, see you soon. Thanks, bye.
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 Titties.